Ever look at a forest and think, man, this place needs a brain? Well, it already has one. It just doesn't bother with a head. Right now, beneath your sneakers, there is a biological neural network stretching for miles. It's actively routing nutrients between trees, texting neighbors about pest invasions, and remembering exactly where the water is hidden. We call it mycelium. But today, we're calling it what it actually is, an underground empire. We are looking at 10 different mushrooms, which are essentially 10 job descriptions in a subterranean corporation that's been running the planet for a few 100 million years. Let's start with a basic logistical question. How do two trees standing a football field apart actually talk to each other? Simple. They use a fiber optic cable made of fungus. Meet Boletus Bicolor. Biologists call it an ectomycorrhizal fungus, which is a fancy way of saying it's a master of microscopic networking. Its filaments wrap around the root tips of oaks and pines, setting up a microscopic trade hub called a Hijacker net. The deal is straightforward. The tree has a monopoly on solar power, so it feeds the fungus pure sugar from photosynthesis. The fungus, meanwhile, is down in the dirt doing the heavy lifting, mining for phosphorus, nitrogen, and heavy metals the tree's chunky roots could never reach on their own. But this isn't just a grocery delivery service, it's a defense contract. The moment a caterpillar starts chewing on tree A, that tree pumps electrical signals and a chemical warning called J-mnemonic ASID straight through the fungal hotline. Tree B receives the text message 100 meters away and immediately starts manufacturing defensive toxins before the bugs even show up. Scientists call it the Wood Wide Web. It's a fully functioning biological internet, and it was running flawlessly long before humans invented the dial-up modem. Now, if Boletus is a polite local internet provider, our next candidate is a hostile corporate takeover. How large is the largest living organism on Earth? Don't say the blue whale. That's rookie trivia. The real heavyweight champion is Armillera oestioye, the honey fungus. Up in Oregon's Malheur National Forest, there is a single armillaria that occupies 9.6 square kilometers. That is roughly 1,350 football fields of a single, continuous, underground organism. Oh, and it's been there for somewhere between 2,400 and 8,600 years. It spreads using these creepy, black, cord-like structures called rhizomorphs. They tunnel through the darkness, pop up yards away from the mothership, and hijack new trees. It is an aggressive parasite that causes white rot, literally dissolving a tree's root system from the inside out. But it's not purely evil. It's just an aggressive urban planner. By wiping out old, weakened trees, it creates canopy gaps, sunlit openings in the forest ceiling that allow a whole new generation of seedlings to breathe. The same monster that assassinates the forest is the one keeping it alive. Let's pivot to pop culture. Why is Santa Claus red and white? If you say because of a vintage Coca-Cola ad, you're missing out on some incredible ancient chemistry. This is Amanuyurta muscaria, the fly agaric. It's the literal emoji for a mushroom. But that iconic red and white outfit isn't a fairy tale aesthetic. It's nature's hazmat sign. It's packed with muscimol and IH-botanic acid, two compounds that basically masquerade as inhibitory neurotransmitters in your brain. Ingesting them doesn't kill you immediately, but it completely distorts your spatial awareness and makes you feel like time is folding in on itself. Enter cultural archaeology. Centuries ago, Siberian shamans would harvest these mushrooms for winter solstice rituals. To honor the fungus, they dress up in bright red and white coats and slide down the smoke holes of snow-covered yurts because the front doors were blocked by snow drifts. Even better, reindeer are absolute addicts for this mushroom. They eat them, get completely wasted, and sprint frantically through the Arctic snow. Flying reindeer? A guy coming down the chimney in a red suit? Santa Claus isn't a marketing gimmick. He's a 10,000-year-old mycological meme. But if Amanita muscaria is a trippy holiday party, its cousin is a cold-blooded true crime documentary. What if the deadliest mushroom in the world looks like an angel? Meet Amanuyurta fahelgwides, the death cap. It looks entirely innocent. Elegant, smooth, pure white. It also happens to be responsible for about 90% of all mushroom-related fatalities worldwide. Here is why it's the perfect assassin. It contains amatoxins, which are entirely immune to heat. You can boil it, fry it, or grill it, and the poison stays at 100% lethality. Once it enters your system, it seeks out an enzyme called RNA polymerase II and completely locks it down. Without this enzyme, your cells lose the ability to read DNA or build protein. Your cellular machinery just stops. But the genuinely sinister part is the timeline. After you eat it, you spend a night violently ill, and then, magically, you feel completely fine for a day or two. Doctors call this the false recovery phase. In reality, the toxin hasn't left. It's just working in absolute silence, systematically dissolving your liver and kidneys at a cellular level. By the time the second wave of symptoms hits, your internal organs are already gone. No antidote, no do-overs. On a lighter note, let's talk about luxury. Why does a pound of wild chanterelles cost upwards of $60? It's not a supply chain issue. It's a biological rebellion. Every autumn, foodies go crazy hunting for these bright, egg yolk yellow cups with that signature apricot aroma. But here's the catch. Humans have never successfully industrialized them. You cannot farm a Chanterelle. Their relationship with the forest soil and host trees is so maddeningly complex that the moment you try to cultivate them in a greenhouse, the mycelium essentially goes on strike and refuses to grow fruit. That addictive, fruity smell comes from a volatile compound called 1-OK-10-3-OL. Ironically, the mushroom didn't invent this scent to pair well with a French butter sauce. It invented it to ward off microscopic soil worms. We are paying top dollar to eat a defense mechanism that smells like stone fruit. If chanterelles are high maintenance, the Périgord black truffle is an outright con artist. How do you replicate the smell of a pig in heat? Underground, in the dark. Truffles grow up to 30 centimeters completely underground. They can't rely on the wind to catch their spores, and they obviously can't walk around. So, they resorted to chemical warfare, specifically weaponized horniness. They synthesize a compound called androstenone, which is the exact sex pheromone found in the breath of a male wild boar. They are quite literally broadcasting a subterranean dating ad targeted at pregnant pigs and truffle hounds. A mammal smells it, loses its mind, digs up the truffle, eats it, and poops out the spores somewhere else. Job done. And they don't play nice with neighbors, either. Truffle mycelium is so aggressively toxic to plants that it kills off every single blade of grass within a few feet of its tree. The French call this dead zone a brûlé, the burned circle. It looks like someone literally scorched the earth from the inside out. If you think the truffle is manipulative, brace yourself. How do you take over a body without killing it first? This is Ophiocordyceps on IH lateralis, famously known as the zombie fungus. When a cordyceps spore hits a carpenter ant, it doesn't kill the ant. At least, not right away. It punches through the shell, multiplies in the bloodstream, and begins flooding the ant with mind-altering chemicals. But here's the mind-blowing part. It doesn't actually eat the ant's brain. It leaves the brain intact and instead weaves its mycelium directly into the ant's muscle fibers, physically hijacking the limbs like a marionette. Because the fungus keeps a strict internal clock, it waits until exactly noon to force the puppet ant to climb up a plant stem. It guides it to a precise height of 25 centimeters, where the temperature and humidity are perfect for fungal growth. It commands the ant to lock its jaws onto a leaf vein in a terminal death grip, and then finally kills the host. A few days later, a horrific fungal spear erupts right out of the back of the ant's head, raining fresh spores down onto the ant trails below. The ant is reduced to nothing more than a biodegradable launch pad with a fading heartbeat. Next up, a mushroom with an existential crisis. What happens when a mushroom dissolves itself on purpose? This is Coprinopesis atramentia, the inky cap. Most mushrooms rely on the elements to wither away. The inky cap prefers automated self-destruction. The moment its spores mature, It triggers an intense release of an enzyme called KY10-ase, which literally digests its own cellular walls. Over the span of just a few hours, the pristine white mushroom melts into a puddle of thick, black sludge. It's a beautifully dramatic, zero-waste exit. But it holds a weird biochemical grudge against happy hours. The mushroom contains a compound called cohprin. By itself, coprin is harmless. But if you have a glass of wine or a beer anywhere within 3 days of eating this mushroom, coprin completely sabotages your liver's ability to process alcohol. It blocks the enzyme that handles toxic acetylide, triggering an instant, violent hangover response. Heart racing, face flushing, pure misery. For obvious reasons, foragers call this the lawyer's cap. It's the only fungus on Earth that can legally enforce sobriety. While humans are still arguing about gender roles, our next fungus has completely transcended the concept. How many biological sexes does a mushroom have? If you guessed 2, you're not thinking like a fungus. It has 23,328 distinct mating types. Why? Because it lives on rotting logs, which is essentially the real estate equivalent of a barren desert. If it only had 2 sexes, a spore landing on a log would only have a 50% chance of finding a compatible mate. But with over 23,000 options, any 2 random spores that bump into each other on a dead branch have a whopping 98% chance of being compatible. 2 biological sexes isn't a rule, it's just a lack of imagination. 23,328 is a bulletproof survival strategy. Finally, we meet the elder statesman of the kingdom. What if something refused to rot for 1,000 years? Ganoderma lucidum, known in Eastern medicine for 2 millennia as Ling, or the mushroom of immortality. Most mushrooms turn to mush in a heavy rainstorm. Ganoderma refuses to rot. Its fruiting body is heavily lignified, meaning it's packed with dense wood-like compounds and KY10 that bacteria simply cannot chew through. It can sit on the side of a tree trunk for years, perfectly frozen in time, completely weatherproof. Inside this organic armor is a cocktail of ganodermic acids and complex polysaccharides. When humans ingest them, they don't act like antibiotics that attack germs directly. Instead, they act as an upgrade patch for your immune system, supercharging your natural killer cells and internal surveillance networks. It doesn't function as a weapon, it functions as a shield. So what's the takeaway here? Every single one of these 10 eccentric organisms is running on the exact same underlying operating system, Mycelium. The very same network that feeds a gourmet chanterelle is the one armillaria uses to conquer an entire mountain range. The same enzyme kit used to melt an Inky cap is repurposed by the death cap to dismantle your liver. Beneath every square inch of forest floor and grassland lies an invisible architecture that has been managing planetary life for 500 million years. The mushrooms we see on the surface aren't the actual organism. They never have been. They are just the user interface. And the network is always online.